Let's talk about 91 days of Bola Tinubu presidency. I'm joined by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Simon Jawando, who joins me from Kwara State. Also joining us on the program is Director, Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, Professor Anthony Killer. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Professor Killer, let's begin with you. The president has again said tough decisions must be made to set the country on a growth trajectory, despite the initial pains that, meaningful reforms, according to him, usually bring. How easy is it to get the country on the side of government this time, given how people's confidence in government has dwindled over the years?
Well, how easy? I think it's not very easy, for two reasons. Reasons of the past and reasons of the present. The past has not given us much reason to trust government in Nigeria, and the present is quite painful. So the government needs to continue actions that will show that they're willing and able to tackle the issues that are affecting Nigerians. I think that is the situation, because people don't want to say, but the situation is very bad, and the present government, just about 90 days old government has inherited a terrible situation at hand. And to move forward, it's not an easy task to answer your question. But I think, symbolic things like attending the gathering of legal professionals is a symbolic good sign of connection with merit. And that's the kind of thing that is required to move the country forward.
Let me bring Senior Advocate into this conversation. The president, has used the platform of your conference to address some critical issues. He mentioned that servicing external debts with 90% of our revenue isn't sustainable, and that as a country we must make the very difficult changes. How does this government win the trust of the people through the hard times?
Well, thank you. I think what the president says is the obvious. It is not sustainable to use such amount to service debt. But the situation we find ourselves in Nigeria is like somebody with toothache. Whether you like it or not, it's going to be excruciatingly painful to get it removed, and we must remove it. So what the president or the government should do to get the buy-in of the people is what the president is already doing. All they need to sustain it, that is communicating with the people, letting the people know the reasons why tough measures have to be taken. These are issues, these are measures that ought to have been taken more than 20 years back. But they have to be taken. And since we have a courageous president that is determined to take these steps, all the government needs to do is continue to engage the populace, continue to engage the people, the reasons why we have to go the way we have to go. I think that's my suggestion.
Communicating with the people, Prof. The president was quoted to have said we cannot have the country we desire without the reforms we have initiated. It's painful at the beginning, in the short and medium term, but we must do what we have to do to take this nation to its great destiny. There are people who would say, for instance, take the removal of full subsidy and the harsh impact, the harsh economic impact on the people. There are, components of the population who have questioned whether government is doing enough in this regard. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's always good to talk to people, to let people who have elected you, for whom you work, know what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's a good start. But, it's also good to show the plan, to say that the reason why we're doing X is that so we can get Y. I also think it is good to show that the pain will have concrete sacrifice. So, for example, if we are hurting because of removal of fuel subsidy, I will have advocated that all the savings from fuel subsidy goes towards refinery. No palliative of any sort, purely for refinery, so that we know that the money we're taking from spending on importing we're planning to use that money to build. And people will know that this is what we're hurting today, so that in X amount of months, we shall see the fruit of that labor. You know, that would be my kind of approach. The other thing, though, is that people need to see initiatives going on. Now with the cabinet in place, you know, if you have a group of over 45 people dealing with 45 different issues, we need to see each one of them coming up with policies and actions, above all actions, that will show that, yes, hope is on the horizon. The president's position is to give, you know, sort of aspirational and philosophical speeches to give an overview. We then expect the soldiers to turn this vision into action. Actions that are measurable. You know, that is what we're going to look at. It is interesting to note that the president is mentioning, rightly so, I must say, issues of security and unemployment, you know, which is what we've been talking about for over 7 years, 8 years to now. It shows those problems are still there. And perhaps just as people say it is time to remove subsidy and understand the pain, it is also time to start resolving the problem, since this problem are 20 years old and above. I think to gain trust and to do good governance is to deal with the issues people are facing and get solutions to such issues.
Senior Advocate, let's talk about the judiciary for a bit. President Tinubu yesterday renewed his commitment to fixing the issue of remuneration, particularly for judicial officers and legal practitioners. According to him, he's saying that true justice reform must begin with world-class salaries and benefits for legal professionals in Nigeria. How important is this to our criminal justice system?
Well, thankfully, what the president has said is the way to go. That our judges and justices are poorly remunerated in this country is an understatement. And to start with, if you say you don't want somebody to get involved in any form of corrupt practices, then such a person must be adequately remunerated. Not only that, the facilities that are necessary for effective and not much trouble delivery of the work must also be made available. So the way to go is one way. One of the ways to go is what the president has said, that is going to make sure that they enjoy world-class salaries and allowances. But the addition to that is the requirement of working condition, the working tools, the working environment. All these things have to be there so that our judiciary will become a world-class one. So we will encourage the president to do that and then go further to also provide the enabling environment in terms of infrastructure and even human resource. That is the supporting staff of the judiciary.
Indeed.
And training and retraining of both judicial officers and the supporting staff.
Prof, I know this is not your turf, but do you agree that better pay for our judges will result in a better justice system?
Well, I think it's a good move. I think the president is right that we must get world-class judiciary. But hey, there are three angles to world-class judiciary. The president has mentioned two. The president has mentioned one. The Attorney General, Jawando, has added the second one. So we've talked about remunerating people well. We're adding the second part, which is a system that works, infrastructure, aids that make the system work. The third one is responsibility. You know, you have to pay people well, but you also have to show them what will happen if they err. You see, it is very important that when people are trained, when they have infrastructure and they're well remunerated, we must also talk about what will happen to them if they commit crime. Because you cannot be charged with dispensing justice and you violate justice. But there should be, in my view, let us pay judges well, let us respect lawyers. But then if a judge should commit a crime, he should get 5 times more the penalty of a normal citizen, because he seeks to administer law, so he should not be breaking the law. And I think that's an important thing. And I think let us say this. It is a good thing to talk about remuneration of justice, of the judiciary, of everybody. When you say this, if you listen to those who follow economics, not just the law, the reaction in the country is that, well, everybody wants more money. I think Political leadership, starting from the president, should also help us to see that the sacrifice, not just remuneration, is equal. Because at the moment, we cannot pay everybody more because there is no money. There's a problem in this country. We talk about pain, but we don't talk a lot about sacrifice and responsibility. Sacrifice will start from what we're giving the political class. I think of the legislature, the amount we're spending to run the political government, and then we should talk about responsibility of those who are charged to administer power, including remunerating and giving them systems that work. That is how you get a world-class system.
All right. So, senior advocates, the interesting thing is what we have seen play out in the past years, a situation where government have disobeyed, court orders. And unfortunately, that has also continued in this administration. The suspended EFCC chairman, has been in custody for over 2 months. You saw what played out in court with the suspended CBN governor. What can this attorney general do differently?
Well, thank you. I think, like the attorney general said when he was being screened at the National Assembly and at the opening ceremony of the NBA conference yesterday, we cannot run away from observing and obeying the rule of law. We cannot run away from that. So what this attorney general we expect him to do, which I know he will do differently, is to ensure that government complies with court order. This attorney general is not a politician. He's a complete fact that the president want to do away with the court order of disobedience to court order. Because I know that for him to have appointed the president attorney general, Prince Fabime, he must be prepared to listen to legal advice that will promote the rule of law and obedience to court orders. So I expect, and I know that by the grace of God, the president general will pave way for obedience to court order.
So you're saying that, senior advocate, you're saying that the decision of government is a function of the president listening to legal advice, because the former vice president was a professor of law himself, and you're wondering if it was a situation where the president wasn't listening to legal advice, or he just had, his own idea of how governance should be done.
You see, the president has said it all, and that has always been my position as the former attorney general, that you can only be as powerful as your appointers want you to be. But the office of attorney general is a very peculiar and special office that requires courage, integrity, and knowledge of law to tell your boss to obey the rule of law and comply with court orders.
Shouldn't we have a system where it's practically impossible for anyone in power not to obey our laws? I mean, it's a system where the law is more important than the leaders.
No, you see, it's a sign of the fact that our democracy is just growing. The laws should be more important than the leader. In fact, the leader is a product of the law. So the law should be more important than the leader. But it's just that our democracy is just developing.
Yeah.
And don't forget our long years of experience, military experience. So some of these things are carried over from the military regimes. So as we go along, especially the more we have real thoroughbred practitioners becoming attorney generals, then we are going to experience more compliance, more due regard for rule of law.
I hear you, senior advocate. Prof, if you can do it in less than a minute, let me allow you to weigh in on this very quickly.
Well, I think less than a minute. I do not buy the idea that because the democracy is new, we are growing gradually. You grow in quantum leaps. The people who are there are reading books. They're not reading books of the military infantry. I think we just need vision to truly believe that what we need is law and order and institution. And we must make it clear, at some point, we should make it clear that any government that disobeys law order, government court order, will face certain consequences. I, for example, advocate that if a state should disobey the order of a court, the attorney general, like my dear friend Jawando, should be arrested. Because his governor is not obeying the law. He should be held personally. We should make something very clear, knowing that people are prone to abusing the law. So before they get to abuse it, we should put this in place. I'm sure Stan wants to say something, now that I've called for his arrest.
Director, Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, Professor Anthony Kila. Thank you for joining us on the program. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Simon Jackson.